Thank you guys so much for having me today. This is such an honor. I love to be able to share these aspects, and especially I live right beside NC State, so it works out perfectly for everything, even though we're virtual today. But so my name is Leah Ward. I own Authentically Connected Coaching. I also own Living Wild Yoga. Those are my two baby businesses that are becoming the real deal, and it just warms my heart. My entrepreneur started about 5 years ago when I took over the yoga studio called Bar Up that's right over by NC State. And for a very long time, I was doing investment and financial management, about 80 hours a week with that. I can't even count how many hours it is to run a studio, teach the classes, and do all those aspects of it behind it. And I just found myself in these two different worlds. And as I started doing more financial coaching and coaching in general, I was fortunate enough to start doing financial management for a company that was professional coaches. It started with DISC and values to help us understand our behaviors. And so that kind of started my love for it. And then my love for small businesses. 5 years ago, I took a chance and said, we're going to do this, and started my own company. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen today. Let's get up in presenter view for everything. There we go, presenter view. Now, hopefully, can you just see the big screen of everything and not all of my notes? Can you see all my notes?
We can see your notes.
Okay. Let me switch screens then. I got this, don't worry. All right, let me share one more time. Desktop 2, share. Not that you can't also read my notes, but it makes me seem way more put together when I get to read those from the Is that better? Is that just the main screen? Okay, we got it. Perfect. Technology, thank you. So Shannon did a fantastic job of already introducing who I am, what we're doing today. So positive intelligence and our PQ. So this training I was actually gifted the ability to do this training about 9 months ago. I fell in love with it so much that I decided to share it with my clients. It works on understanding the negative and positive emotions. And when Shannon started talking about self-awareness and positive mindsets, I just felt like this was going to be the perfect space to come into today. So hopefully everybody took their saboteur quiz. If you didn't, there's still time. And then afterwards, we're going to talk about our PQ and taking our PQ quiz. So our PQ is our positive intelligence quotient here. So it's the measure of our mental fitness. So think about the idea, if you are physically fit, you can climb steep hills without any physical stress. But if
you can climb and you can do this and you can try to make sure, and the point of it is to just
I just muted somebody. I think we're so good. But so if you think about the idea, if you're mentally fit, you can start to handle the challenges that life is bringing you. And where we are today with the world, with COVID, with just where we are in our space, we are having to take on so many more challenges than we've ever had to take on before from that lens. So we're going to try to build our positive mental muscles here versus the negative and start to work through that way. So I won't spend any time here. We already did this part of who I am, but I love coaching. I love helping people. The whole point of why I do what I do is if I can make a difference for people to be happier, and then they can make a difference for the next person to be happier, it's a trickle effect. And I'm here for every aspect of that. Agreements today. I just hope that, you listen to connect. Please, if you'd like to, have your screen on, engage. I can't see the chat pieces as well as I'm doing this, but if there are any questions and I miss it in the chat, I will reach out to you afterwards. I'm happy to, but I hope that you find a new skill set and enjoy yourself through doing all of this. So what to expect today? So according to Forbes' recent article, 81% of people are faking being happy. So there's a lot of heavy reality going out in the world today. How often are we actually feeling connected to people? How often are you feeling connected to your friends, your coworkers? So what we want to do is take a step back, see what saboteurs or negative feelings are coming in, and how can we reframe them into a more positive way? the way that we look at this is the sage is more of the positive perspective on how a problem can be converted into a gift or an opportunity. And I'll say this again, I know that not every problem can be a gift or an opportunity, but this is at least to help us start to reframe and get more of a positive mindset going forward with everything. So this relates to us. So happiness builds when our sage reactions outweigh our saboteurs, or our positive reactions outweigh our negative for 3-1. So think about that. For every one negative comment that you say, that you hear, that you experience, in order to become neutral again, you have to have 3 positives. And that takes time. It takes patience, and it takes really the mindset to be able to come into this space and want and be willing to have that positive mindset going forward for everything. You know, we talk about always the diversity of race, gender, and sexuality. I teach the diversity of communication and how important that is, but we also have a diversity in our mindsets. We have different and heavier saboteurs that all hit us differently. They make us unique, but they can also help us as we build more conscious awareness and start to have that idea of how can we start to reframe our mindset. So with that is how can we boost our PQ or our mental fitness for everything? So if you think about it, mental fitness is the capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rigor rather than a negative mindset. When we can do this, we have increased happiness, lower stress. We can be 3 times more creative. We can live 10 years longer. Our teams can be better. Our sales can be better. Our just lives professionally and personally can be better because they're impacted by better performance, peace of mind and happiness, and healthy relationships. So all these pieces, if you think about it and take a step back, our mind is your best friend, but it's also your worst enemy. This positive intelligence measures the relative strength of these 2 modes in your mind. A high positive intelligence means that your mind acts more as your friend than your enemy. A lower positive intelligence just means the reverse, that you're handling situations more negatively than positively. This research is based on over 500,000 participants. It's based on Shirzad Chamine, who came in and created this off of positive psychology, cognitive psychology, performance science, and our neurosciences of how these negative emotions are impacting our lives for everything that we're doing. And the reason why this system really stood out to me is the way that we're reframing things is we're focusing on the positive muscles. We're also helping solve the root causes instead of the symptoms. The other piece here is we're using one operational system instead of all of these countless ways. I know that we've all been to workshops, which, 5 pillars for motivating teams, 4 ways to manage conflict, 9 new techniques to handle stress. And some of those become contradictory in our minds. And this is simply what aspect is the negative? How can we reframe it into a positive? And how can we move forward with this? This system is based off of 3 main pieces. We've got our saboteurs, which we're going to talk about. There's 10 saboteurs, and these are our negative feelings. We've got our sage perspective, which this is our positive reframing. And then we have our self-command practice. And at the end of class today, we're going to go through a few of those, which are less than 2 minutes. We call them PQ reps or positive intelligent reps. And it's just ways to help us connect. And there's a lot of different ways. For me personally, touch does really well. I'm a yoga instructor and I still can't meditate to save my life sometimes. The world is just moving too fast. So the reason why we talk about different ways is just to help you guys understand that there's not one way fits all. There's trying to figure out different ways that truly work for you to help you build that positive piece and explore more ways. So we have the breakout again. We've got the saboteurs, which are negative emotions, and they come in as fear, stress, anger, and guilt, shame, and insecurity. Then we have our sage, which are positive emotions of empathy and curiosity and creativity and passion. And what if for every negative or tough situation that you came into, you felt the negative, and then instead of holding on to it, we reframed it into a positive way, a positive opportunity, a way to start to think of ways that motivate us more. So the other aspects, this can help us improve performance, communication. It can help resolve conflict. It can help open up with our job security and how we feel fulfilled and satisfied. It can help us be more successful in relationships, feel less stressed. Even if you're driving in the car and you're an angry driver, and we can reframe just one honk of the horn, maybe we can bring the world into a little bit of a better place slowly and together. And I promise you guys, I was going to be talking fast today. I want to make sure that we can get all these pieces done and keep it going. And I really want to focus on the saboteurs. I want to focus on what of these aspects have we experienced? What feels familiar? Hopefully there's something that I say today that connects or resonates in a way that even one piece of me talking for 50 minutes that can reframe and make your day and life a little bit easier, then I feel successful with that. So I'm going to dive into our saboteurs and get it going with everything. If you haven't taken the saboteur quiz, you can take it now. That's completely fine. It's very quick. It takes about 2 minutes to see what your kind of top saboteurs are. I'll tell you right now, mine are avoider and hyperachiever. And when we get into that a little bit longer, you will see what a predicament that puts me internally, as I avoid situations very harshly. I procrastinate, but I'm also a hyperachiever. So then I stress about doing a really good job. So it can really cause a lot of friction internally. But building that awareness is what helps me not feel guilty for going there. Now, when I start to feel like I'm procrastinating, instead of having self-loathing or shame for that feeling, I'm aware that that's what I do. And I'm aware that I can reframe that. I ask myself, what's making me avoid this? How can I reframe? How can I turn this into a positive? How can I help myself get to this space and actually get the work done versus continue to procrastinate? Because that's just going to mess up with my hyperachiever. And it's going to make them very angry when I continue to procrastinate. So hopefully we have some relevant pieces for everybody to connect to today. The origins of the saboteurs. So they start off as guardians. They're built to help us survive as we're children. But by the time we become adults, we don't need them anymore. But they've also become invisible inhabitants of our mind. They are creating patterns of thinking and feeling, and they can hijack where our emotions are at any given time. They can be triggered. They can come through and they can bring those patterns for what they say are protecting us, but really they're going to be hurting us to continue in there. We're learning this because our saboteurs claim that they're good for us. You know, our judge will tell us that constant badgering over our mistakes or our shortcomings can cause us to improve. But short wins aren't big wins. We're looking for longevity of happiness. We're not looking for small little steps here. And the piece of this is you can't defeat an enemy that you don't know exists. So if we can start to bring awareness, if we can give names to these different saboteurs or negative feelings, we can start to identify them and expose them when they start to show up in our lives for everything. The idea of this saboteur. So it says that they're pushing you to improve. You know, kids that were mean to us in school pushed us to strive harder. That's not untrue. We can succeed by being pushed. It's a negative reinforcement that pushed us here. But research shows that if we are pulled by positive feelings, we're going to be far happier for much longer, and a lot more happiness and positive reinforcement for longevity with everything. So think about that idea. Next time you think of a situation where, well, if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been pushed to do X, Y, Z. But what if we could reframe that into a mindset of somebody encouraged you and suggested and pulled you and helped you? So now you're not being pushed into a situation based on that negative reinforcement. You're being pulled based on the positive reinforcement from the curiosity and compassion that was actually within you already. So again, just another way to start to think about all these pieces. And it's important to understand because these lies tell us that they're making us happier, but they're not. In reality, it creates the opposite in the long run, and winning those small battles does lose the bigger war for us. So when we think about this, we talk about what is motivating us for all these people. You think about push, pull, what's motivating us? So our saboteurs show us how our emotions can negatively manifest. The sage shows us how we can reframe from that survival mindset to a positive mindset. Our judge is present with everyone. So that is the master saboteur. It finds fault with ourselves. It finds fault with others. It finds fault in circumstances. It's what causes more disappointment, anger, regret, guilt, shame. So we want to learn who this judge is, because the judge then activates our accomplice saboteurs, and those are our other 9. And typically, our 2 highest accomplished saboteurs, it's really what's making our decisions through everything, through life, how we're going through with the negativity. When we come in here, so here's our big information sheet. And I know that we're recording this, so don't worry, everybody will have access to this to look at it again. But so we've got our judge, our master saboteur, and then our accomplice saboteurs. We have these 9 negative emotions that show up in our life. And you'll see to the side, there's a style and a motivated vibe. So each one of these has a different style. So with their style, we've got avoid, assert, and earn. So with assert, this is the most active and commanding style. It's taking action that demands fulfillment of our primary need. Our other style is earning. It's earning the hard work to get the fulfillment that you need. And then the last one that we have is avoid. You withdraw yourself. You need that attention for the pieces, and you hide from everything. It's matched with what's motivating us. Our motivation can be independence, the need for boundaries with others. It can motivate us through acceptance, the need to maintain a positive image of others and ourselves. And security, the need to have control of life anxieties, to push away and minimize anything that's not feeling good. So each of these saboteurs is based on an avoid, an assert, an earn, or a security, an acceptance, or an independence in those needs that fill us up and help thrive with those negative emotions. So as we get into this, the judge is showing up. So the judge brings in so much issues and conflicts with relationship. It's a biased mindset towards noticing, exaggerating, and reacting to negative emotions. And it becomes the key function. And it's a universal saboteur shared by all of us, regardless of the circumstances of our upbringing. But so for this, the outcome is always bad. It wants you to see the bad, to stay in the bad, instead of focusing on the good parts of anything that's coming through. So we know the judge is always there, but how are we going to dive into our accomplice saboteurs? So we're going to get started. Hopefully I haven't talked too fast yet so far. I'm keeping an eye on the time, but again, I want to be able to hopefully relate to you guys, to have something that you connect with. And so here we go. Our first one is our avoider. So this avoider, the style is avoiding, the motivation is independence. So who here has resonated with the avoider? Who here has taken the assessment and felt that that one came up and they connected to it? This can rise from happy and difficult childhoods. In a happy childhood, someone might not have learned resiliency or dealing with difficult emotions. In a childhood with high conflict and tension, the avoider might be the peacemaker, or just find security in quietness and avoiding any of those family tensions that are going on. You know, they can procrastinate. I mean, I'll raise my hand right here. This is totally me, 100%. We can be passive aggressive. We have suppressed anger sometimes because we run away from feelings. And so if you think about that, this world isn't just made up of bad feelings. So when I run away from feelings, I'm running away from all of them, not just the negative. So I'm missing out on so many good positive pieces that can come from these different things. We can lose ourselves in comforting routines and habits. And it's just a way to, it is an extreme way of avoiding difficult and unpleasant conflicts. So with this, the impact on ourselves is the sage will help us convert the conflicts to gift. And we'll get into that in a little bit later. But we bring awareness to these saboteurs, and we can let go of the shame that might be associated with being an avoider, with being a procrastinator for here. So the lies that we might tell ourselves, someone needs to be the peacemaker. I know for me that resonates. It's good to be flexible. No good comes out of conflict. But what if good came out of having a conversation? But I avoid conflict so much that I don't ever give myself that ability to have the conversation. You're a good person to spare others' feelings. As an avoider, I can say sometimes I'm a coward when it comes to my feelings. I come across as even keeled. I come across as I don't have a lot of anxiety, but really internally, it's running 100 miles an hour. We think that if it's just too unpleasant, maybe we'll just take a step away. It'll be fine. It'll resolve itself. I don't know. I've been around for a little while and I don't know much of what's resolved itself for me. I'd rather give someone else their way than create a scene. That's holding back and not actually expressing anything. And then we have those resentful feelings that come in for here. So we're talking about the avoider here and how is this showing up in our everyday lives? Denying these conflicts that do exist prevent one from actually working with them and turning them into gifts. At the same time, there are strengths of the avoider. They do seek peace and harmony for others. They can be easygoing and flexible and adaptable. For these pieces, they do have a tendency to be positive and pretty non-judgmental of others. Now, it might be to protect themselves, but still can be pretty non-judgmental for everything. So how can we transfer when we're coming into these avoider pieces with a sage perspective? You can start to understand the difference between numbing as a strategy for generating peace versus using the sage discernment and action towards finding peace. So when have you been numbing? When have you been pushing away from others before? How can you have that conversation? One of the things that I teach in communication training, and I use DISC and values as my assessments for those, are, we're always taught, do unto others as you would have done. But the reality is we are all unique, we are all diverse, we are all different, and we all approach things differently. So just because I am scared to have a conversation doesn't mean who I'd be talking to is also scared. Maybe they've been waiting for that conversation. So we try to look at the things instead of do unto others as we would have done, as in these moments, do unto others as they would have done. How can we be productive together? How can we start to take a step back and really see who it is that we're working with? So the avoiders within us aren't ashamed to have that conversation, aren't fearful of expressing themselves. And so they can start to have that open trust level with others to really start to increase their happiness. So our next one here is, let's see. Oh, and I got one question. If we scored a 5, is that a neutral? So for these pieces here, I'm just talking about the ones that show up as the highest for everything. We are complex creatures. I'm talking about very specifically each one of these individually, but understand that we're made up of all these different sides and all these different pieces. These are just who is showing up the highest. And so for me, the example is I'm an avoider and a hyperachiever. Those are showing up as 9s and 10s for me. That's where a lot of our negative emotions will stand. If you have a lower one, it doesn't mean that you can't have lower negative emotions coming through there. It just might not be as often as other times. So as we come into the next one, the controller, and I don't want to throw off anything else, so I'm going to hold off by looking at the chat until the very end for everything. But I promise that if we can't get to a question here, I am happy to respond to you afterwards and help with any answers. But so our controller is styled by assertiveness and motivated by independence. So this is an anxiety-based need to take charge and control of situations. They are stimulated by conflict. They can intimidate others. They need to be in control. So This is often coming from a hidden fear of being controlled by others or life. The controller is sometimes associated with early life experiences where childhood was forced to grow up fast, to be on your own, to take charge of a chaotic situation. It can also be associated with being hurt or rejected or betrayed. And you're deciding, I don't want to be vulnerable anymore. So when you start to be triggered by some of these emotions and you're a higher controller with your saboteurs, those initial emotions that are going to come out are going to say, no, I'm in charge. You can't hurt my feelings. I'm completely fine here. They might not be patient with others. They might even be surprised that other people get hurt because they're in their own space here for coming through of everything. So how this can impact is once we start to pull the sage perspective in here, the sage helps us reframe vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. Being vulnerable is a very strong stance, and helping reframe that mindset helps a higher controller understand that. But again, we're bringing awareness to these saboteurs. So when we're showing up, we can start to ask these questions. Lies that they'll tell us is you need to push people. And remember, we talked about before, pushing and pulling and how that works. If I don't control, I'll be controlled. I can't live with that. I'm trying to get the job done for everyone. So all these pieces are really heightening their feelings of anger and intimidating and high anxiety. And remember, this is just talking about this one space for us. You feel like you're doing them a favor. You can almost come a little arrogant with how you can help people, like they couldn't do it without you for anything. So how are these ones showing up? And what are the strengths? A controller can help challenge themselves and others, but what if they started to be able to challenge with pulling with those positive emotions versus pushing those negative emotions? They're able to do the right thing, even if it's unpopular, because they are very confident with that. They can see possibilities and activate themselves and others towards positive incomes. And they are confident, they're action oriented. The controller does get temporary results when they're in their negative, but it's the cost of others' feelings. Maybe they're going to have people, their friends, that are resentful now. They can also create a huge amount of anxiety for others. So with our sage perspective, how can we come in here? If we're understanding the value of long-term influence versus short-term gain, the controller can start to have some sage perspective here. It's not about that little look. We're expanding our lens. We're looking further into the future here for everything. So coming into our next one, we have the hyperachiever. So here's my other high one here. So this is assertiveness and acceptiveness. So the hyperachiever needs self-validation. They need self-acceptance. They need self-love. And these are all conditional pieces for them. So what can often happen is they become workaholics here. They can be self-promoting, competitive. They can cover up their insecurities by showing the work that they're doing. Their emotions are based on achievements. And as a personal of what I've experienced here is because of being a hyperachiever and not being aware of it for so long, it didn't matter what I achieved. It was a check of the box and it was on to the next. And I've never really been able to give myself, until I started training this way and reframing my mind, the ability to congratulate myself on what I've accomplished and what I've been able to do. And so being able to take a step back and pat myself on the back, give myself a hug, be patient, has done wonders for the ability to help others. It's helped me not just keep looking at the task, check the box, but connect to people even more, connect to the people that have helped me, find friendships, and actually take a step away from working for a second and come back even more fully charged. We are good at covering up our insecurities and always showing that positive image. It doesn't matter what was happening. Right before I started today, my internet went out and I was like, okay, well, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? I knew that as soon as the camera turned on, I would be smiling. I would be showing that positive image, but my mind is going 100 miles an hour. I'm not connected to the work because I'm trying to figure out how can I make this work? How can I fix this? And instead of taking a second or a step back and knowing that I can ask for help, that we're going to figure it out. I didn't want my performance to be evaluated because the internet was bad. And so I add in all these other negative pieces that had nothing to do with me. And we create these really tough situations for ourselves. With a hyperachiever, peace and happiness is fleeting for us. It's short-lived and brief. So we want to expand that out. Justifications and lies. Life is about achieving and producing results. For me personally, I don't say that as an outward piece. I say that as an inward piece to be successful, to be happy. And I know that that's not true. Feelings are just a distraction. They don't help anything. I don't let my emotions come into my work piece, but I do have emotions in my work piece. I'm not a robot for anything. The thoughts, I must be the best at what I do. For me, I don't want to be the best for what I do to be the best for me. I want to be the best for other people in that sense. But still, I'm so disappointed if I feel like I haven't done enough or I didn't do a great job for others. So our strengths, we are driven and pragmatic and adaptable. We're capable of growing ourselves and others for other things. We do have that drive. We want to reframe our anxiety producing space into something fun, into a game. How can we add fun aspects to this? With this too, how can our sage perspective help? See how the words "you'll be happy when" keep showing up. And with that mindset, you're actually giving power and achievements away. How many times have we all said, well, I'll be happy when this is done. I'll be happy when XYZ happens. Instead of just enjoying the moment with it, instead of taking a step back and seeing how far we've come and what a great job we're doing and acknowledge those pieces with a positive mindset. Think about how much further we could go if we stop looking at life, I'll be happy when, and find that reframe. All right, we're doing it. Hyper rational. They are the style of avoiding the motivation of security here. So hyper rational. So for these guys, they can be intellectually arrogant. They can be perceived as cold. The hyper rational is the survival strategy from our early childhood circumstances of emotional turmoil or chaotic surroundings. The escape into this neat and orderly rational mind generates a sense of security and a sense of intellectual superiority. It also helps gain attention and praise by showing that they're the smartest person in the room. For these guys, they don't show feelings. They have ideas for everything. They can lose track of time with intense concentration. They have exclusive focus on the rational processing of pieces. And so think about our relationships. Who's been in a relationship with a hyper-rational where one of you has all of these emotional feelings and a hyper-rational cannot connect to those? That's where this piece comes in. What if your hyper-rational significant other can take a step back and understand that there's more to these pieces, that there are emotions that are coming into this? This can really affect the limit of depth and flexibility that somebody has and can have in a relationship if they're so busy analyzing rather than experiencing these feelings. For these pieces, the rational mind is the most important thing, and it should be protected from any wasteful intrusion of people's messy emotions. That's a good lie that we tell ourselves as a hyper-rational. Feelings, they can be frustrated with others for being too emotional and not rational enough. How can they not think this way? Well, maybe because we're all unique and we're all different and we all show up differently. And it's about respecting the diversity of how we're all showing up. We don't know what's going on the insides of other people or what their saboteurs are. So how can we take a step back with those pieces and reframe that? How is this showing up? Show them that intimacy does require vulnerability. A challenge here is challenge them to experiment going 10% beyond their comfort zone with emotions and tell them it's okay. You're not asking them to create a whole ship. You're just asking them to hop on the boat with you, to start to understand that. Some positive strengths here. They do have great mental concentration. They can be very observant and they can have drive towards an expertise in an area. It can be really helpful. But how can we help them distinguish the difference of what problems are best solved with data analysis versus empathy or intuition? We're taking away their rationality, and we're not taking away their rationality. We're just adding more depth to them. So we're not trying to change anybody. We're just trying to open our lens to a little bit different experience here. Our hypervigilant. So this one is a style of earning and a motivation of security. So the hypervigilant often comes from early experiences when the sources of safety and security were unpredictable or unreliable. It could also result when a painful, unexpected event came into life, proved something to be threatening or unreliable. You know, I know that we have experienced very terrible things here. Some of those pieces can really stick with us. And with that, the saboteur of the hypervigilant will come in. It can't ever rest. You know, it has chronic doubt of themselves, of others. They're cynical, or they can be anxious and fearful of everything. They're extraordinarily sensitive to danger signals that are coming up, and they can be very suspicious of others because they've already been hurt. They can't take any more. So this is where we come in with that positive reframing for everything. You know, lies that they would tell ourselves: life is full of dangers. If you don't look out for them, who will? Think about this. This is a hard way to live. The constant anxiety burns such a great deal of vital energy that they could otherwise be using for such a positive purpose. And others would begin to avoid the hypervigilant because they're so intense, and they would drain their energy as well. They're so anxious and highly vigilant with everything. They're very fearful with aspects that are coming in. So how is this showing up for everybody? We want to expose this lie that they have. We want to tell them that safety and security cannot be found by controlling external circumstances. It's only found within. You want to feel pieces here. You want to feel those aspects. You want to use the sage gift perspective of how can you convert a bad outcome to a gift, or reframe to a positive thought. Now, again, I'm generalizing. There are bad circumstances where there's not a positive aspect to it, but how can we try to reframe ourselves here with everything? You know, hypervigilants are loyal, reliable. They are sensitive and aware of risks and dangers. They are great to have around, but they also need to be aware of what energy they're creating and putting out there for others and themselves. The pleaser. We're doing great, guys. We're doing this. All right. Our pleaser is style of earning and motivation of acceptance. And hopefully everybody has heard one or two of them themselves already with their saboteurs. Our pleaser tries to earn attention and acceptance through helping others. This is an indirect attempt to have one's emotional needs met. It is fed by two original assumptions that are picked up in childhood. Number one, I must put other needs ahead of my own. And number two, I must give love and affection in order to get any back. Think about that. I must give love and affection in order to get any back, and I must put others' need ahead of my own. How many people have experienced these pieces? We have down there on the bottom that they can manipulate others. It's not in a space of trying to do bad, but they're trying to manipulate them in the sense of, I'm going to do something nice for you, so you'll do something nice for me. That's where the manipulation can come in there. And they might not even realize that they're pulling those pieces in. So this can really jeopardize taking care of one's own need, including the emotional, the physical, the financial. It can lead to resentment and burnout. You know, for this piece, some of the lies: the world would be a better place if everyone did the same thing. I help others selflessly and don't expect anything in return. Pleasers do expect pieces in return to come through them. You know, their feelings of expressing their own needs directly feel selfish, so they don't put that there, but they can be passive with those aspects of it. They can be resentful or feeling taken for granted a lot of times. That's a big feeling for people, and that's from not expressing ourselves here. The pleaser's strengths, though, they can be empathetic, loving, and giving. They can be very tuned into others' feelings. With empathizing and giving to others, the sage here can be your greatest strength professionally and personally. So we want to remember the joy is in the giving and learning to say no. And learning to say no can always be a yes to something else. So when we would say no to one person and then our pleaser would come in and make us feel guilt or shame, what if that no for that scenario opened us up to another scenario, to another space that was better for us? So having those pieces in here. The restless. All right, we're almost done. Restless here. Assert and security is our motivation. So the strategy is to find a constant new source of excitement, pleasure, or self-nurturing fun activities here. This can be associated with early life experiences with inadequate nurturing or painful circumstances. For here, we can be anxious based, feels chaotic and scattered. They can be all over the place, constant busyness. I always say I have a squirrel brain. I think the restless comes in here sometimes. They always are seeking constant new stimulation. So who has been like this where they cannot stop? They have to juggle so many things just to keep going. They tell themselves life is too short. It must be lived to the fullest. Well, what if rest is something that we actually needed in order to have those? Underneath the surface of all this fun and excitement, the restless is full of anxiety based on escape from the present moment that they are in. And that might include dealing with unpleasant things. Maybe they can't sit still because they don't want to experience whatever pieces are inside that might not feel good. They avoid a real and lasting focus on issues and relationships that truly matter because they're continuously jumping around for everything. They cannot stop for those pieces. All the chaos, all the frenzy here. And also, if you think about it, it can turn multitaskers into people that are terrible at multitasking. Just because you can juggle 100 things at once doesn't mean you're doing it well here. So how can we help our sage perspective? How can we reframe this? It's important to stop, acknowledge the feelings that we're running from, and let them feel in your body, in your space here. Because restlessness can be curious and spontaneous and have a lot of energy and vitality. So how can we keep those strengths positive and helpful and fun to be around versus chaotic and full of frenzy? We've got our stickler. Our stickler is style of earn and motivation of independence. The stickler offers a way of quieting the constant voice of self-judgment and fear others' judgments through trying to be perfect. So if you want to do it right, the stickler will tell you how to do. Perfectionism is a huge piece for them. They can be highly critical of others. They can be sensitive to criticism themselves. And the need for order is so extreme here. With a stickler, they can really cause rigid ideas, rigid feelings. They can reduce flexibility in dealing with others. It can cause resentment and anxiety. And they could feel like they're never happy. They've never done enough here. So one of the lies, it is up to me to fix whatever mess I encounter. Perfectionism is good, plus it makes me feel better about myself. We're not perfect. We're all humans here. They can be very confrontational, difficult to work with because there's no budge on there. So where in this scenario can we take a step back? How can we shift from that perfect order to perfect mental harmony? What if we change those ideas and we change the idea of what perfectionism is? And what if we found perfect mental harmony for these pieces? They might have suppressed anger that's stored up in the body, and bringing that piece into control helps them understand finding balance. They do have great ideals and standards. They're able to be organized for everybody. They're very self-disciplined. So there's so many good things about a stickler, but also how can we bring all these pieces in to make them safe and good for everybody and not just with the negative emotions. Our last one here, we've got the victim. The style is avoid, the motivation is acceptance. The victim is sometimes associated with a childhood experience of not feeling seen or accepted, or coming to the belief that something is especially wrong with you. They can be very emotional and temperamental. They can pout, sulk, they need attention. There's extreme focus on themselves. The victim mentality is a real saying and a real word. So with this piece, the vitality is wasted through focus of internal processing and brooding, and it backfires by pushing people away. They tell themselves lies that sadness is noble and sophisticated thing that shows exceptional depth, insight, and sensitivity. All these pieces sit within them. You know, the woe is me coming out. Why are you feeling woe is me? How can we reframe this? What if we realize that dwelling in the negative emotions and mood does not lead to a greater discovery of the self? You know, they are able to be introspective and individualistic and sensitive and feel emotions, but we need to be able to process in that positive reframing here when that victim saboteur starts to come in for everything. So through these pieces, one of the biggest takeaways, negative emotions, is pain good for you? If you touched a hot burner and you didn't have pain, we would burn our hands. So pain is important, but you only need it as an alert signal for that 1 second. Touch the hot pan. Ow, it alerts me to take my hand off. What if we reframe that? What if we talked about a bad situation? What if we put our hands on that burning pan? And then how many times do we stay in those negative emotions? Instead of acknowledging them, feeling them, and then removing our hand to take care of ourselves. A lot of times we stay there with our hand on the pan. We need to understand that those negative emotions, those saboteurs, we need to acknowledge them, to feel them, but then not stay with them. So next time you're in this situation where you've been in this negative state for more than a day or an hour or 10 minutes, think about your hand on a hot pan. Do you want to keep your hand there, or do you want to remove your hand, maybe get Neosporin, maybe get a Band-Aid, maybe you took it off fast enough? But how can we reframe to start taking care of yourself, to start giving you that positive mindset, that positive love, and all those pieces of self-awareness that are coming through? And with that piece, the sage. So I'm going to say this, every outcome or circumstance can be turned into a gift or opportunity. I still feel strongly that is a generalized statement because the world is hard. There's a lot of pieces out there. So I am not saying that every single circumstance can be positive. I know what I've experienced. I know my journey. I know that there is the ability to reframe, but sometimes that's taken 10 or 15 years after a circumstance to be able to do that. This isn't an immediate piece. And I hope that everybody holds on to that this is just an idea to start to help us become more positive, to start having more of that 3-to-1 of sage to saboteur mindset, and to start building that positive intelligence and that mental fitness that comes through everything. You know, our sage is our positive emotions, clear-headed focus, creativity, seeing big pictures for everything. And with that, we have a choice here. So we have the ability, when an event happens, to go to our saboteurs, which is the negative mindset, or to the sage, which is the positive mindset. And the answer of which perspective is true is whichever answer you believe is what comes true. If you believe this is bad, that will be bad. If you believe that you can reframe this and find an opportunity in it, you will be able to find an opportunity in it. With the sage piece, it's broken off into 3 gifts in the sense of we've got knowledge, we've got power, and we have inspiration. So when you start to switch over for everything, what knowledge do you need to find that positive space? What power is this problem giving you as far as the weight in a gym? What inspiration can you commit to an inspiring action that you wouldn't have had if this bad thing had happened? So we're not justifying the bad piece, but can we commit to an inspiring aspect that can help us grow, that can help us learn, that can help somebody else? Because we're all here to help other people and to help ourselves and to have the best lives that we can through here. And I'm going through this really fast. You know, today's purpose, I really wanted to resonate and speak about the saboteurs, to hopefully have you connect, to start to bring awareness to some of those hidden enemies. So when I coach, this is a year-long coaching aspect here of starting to work with our sages, but I didn't want to not put them on here. So we have the empathize, explore, innovate, navigate, and activate. So these pieces are just where our sage powers can come from. So the empathize, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Explore, let yourself fully understand what's going on. Innovate, come up with ideas in a non-judgmental and collaborative way. Navigate, seek guidance from your wiser elder self or other people that you trust. And activate, bring in those actions that commit to solving the problem. So how can we relate this to our work, to our friends, to our family, to ourselves? There's so many ways in different situations that we're in that we can start to reframe our mindset to that more positive space here. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have for this part, but the last portion of this is our self-command. So these are our PQ reps. And our PQ reps, there are tactical ways, there are tense and relaxed ways, there are moving ways, there's sitting ways. I'm going to take us through really quick, a 1 minute, I'm going to speed it up, of a tactical way. And this is one that I have really found that I've liked. So take a deep breath. If you've disconnected for a little bit and you're coming back in, just let yourself sit comfortably. Let your spine sit up straight and relaxed, your head straight, your chest open, your feet flat on the floor, and then close your eyes. These reps are the sense of touch. Take your 2 fingers, I'm going to take my thumb and my index finger, and rub them gently together. Bring such attention that you can feel the fingertips, the ridges on both fingers. Now take all the fingertips in one hand against the fingertips of the other hand. What sensations can you feel? Can you feel the ridges of your fingers? Can you feel the heat coming in? Now take your right hand to your stomach and notice the gentle rising and falling of the stomach through each breath. Feel the lifting, feel the releasing. And now whenever you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. So that was a tactical PQ rep. Every time you feel triggered by a saboteur, that's when you pull in your PQ reps. You'll see me walking around with my fingertips going crazy over here, just trying to step away. So, and for me, the mental aspect is really hard. And even I'm a 500-hour yoga instructor. I teach meditation. But what I have found is that doesn't always work for me based on the space that I'm in. But when I have to take my mind to what my finger ridges feel like, or finding a color around us that I haven't seen, or taking your focus onto something other than what you're being triggered on, you're able to take a step back and have that idea of how else can I look at things instead of the way that I have been looking at them. So it's replacing the negative with a positive. So I'll send you guys the other ones because I know that we're rushed on time here, but that's just one. That one works for me. Again, you can take 1 minute. That's what I do with my training. That's what my app does for everybody, is it walks you through those pieces. And I've just found that when I get triggered, it pulls me back in. So the importance of these concepts. So we have the saboteur muscles. So the idea here is exposing them. What is showing up? We don't know what we can't see. So today we worked on building our self-awareness of what is triggering us, what voices are in our head that generate negative emotions. Then we've talked about the sage muscle, to learn to boost the sage, to replace with that positive reframing so that we can handle life's challenges with better happiness, with more completion. And then the self-command piece is ways that we can boost that positive mindset, the sage in there, 10-second exercises, doing this every day. And it does take a long time. This isn't something that just snapped your fingers, I'm happy. Life doesn't work that way. And if it does, then kudos. And I am so jealous and happy for you. But unfortunately, that's how life goes sometimes. With this, the results are here. It helps us increase our productivity. It helps us live longer being happy. It helps us perform better in teams when we are happier. These pieces are all internal. When I talk about the DISC and values, that's really external pieces. This is taking it a step further, increasing our performance. When you're happy, you feel less stress and more peace. It helps us build our relationships and improve these pieces through trust and harmony. And what I hope today you take away is that remembering that every accomplishment starts with a decision to try. So just being on this meeting, listening to me for even just for a minute before I started going off for a whole hour of talking, hopefully somewhat engaging for everyone. Remember, everything starts with your decision to try. So with this, anybody that is on here, what I wanted to offer is a group seating. So through my PQ program, it is an 8-week program where you have the app access, you have access to me for coaching through everything. And I wanted to do it with a group of people. So a group of 3, and I'm going to send out an email to everybody. I'm going to send you an email about taking the PQ and seeing where your positive intelligence is. I also want to send out an app of anybody that would like to apply to win. The group seating would just be a $25 coaching session. So a very reduced rate. If you don't win, you got me for next to nothing to be able to go through a one-on-one session. But I want people to be able to connect. I want people who are serious about wanting to work on their self-awareness and building and all those pieces. Or if you just have a question and you don't want to do that, Leah at authenticallyconnected.com. I do this because I want to help and make a difference. So I'm here for anybody that needs it. I'll send out all that information later today or tomorrow. But truly, thank you guys so much. I know there was a ton of stuff going on in the chat. I couldn't keep up with everything. But again, any questions that you guys have, I'm happy to stay on for another minute, or if you want to shoot me an email, I'm happy to answer and take that time for you guys for one-on-one. So whatever I can do now to help, please let me know.